Ukraine strikes 30% drone advantage over Russia. Ukraine's defense forces are now deploying 30% more strike drones per day than Russian troops across the front line, according to a senior official in Kyiv, a reversal from the significant disadvantage Ukraine faced just over a year ago. The figures, released April 8, came from Brigadier General Pavlo Palisa, deputy head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, in an interview with local media, and represent the most detailed public accounting yet of where the drone war actually stands heading into the spring of 2026. The ratio of strike drone usage between us and the enemy is now different 1.3 to 1 in our favor. That is, we are using 30% more strike drones than the enemy. And this is producing results, Palisa said. The statement applies to what Ukrainian officials term front strike, drone systems deployed directly against enemy positions along the contact line, and covers the entire front rather than any single sector. Palisa was explicit on that point, noting that the headline number does not tell the full story everywhere. On certain sections of the front, Russian forces retain a numerical advantage in strike drones, and Ukrainian fighters feel that pressure directly. The fiber-optic drone count is particularly telling. The daily share of fiber-optic drones among all strike drones used by Ukraine's defense forces stands at 32%, despite existing problems with materials, procurement, and contracting. Russia's equivalent figure is 24%. Fiber-optic systems use a physical cable connecting the drone to its operator instead of a radio signal, making them essentially immune to electronic warfare, jamming, a capability that has become one of the most consequential technological shifts of the war. Palisa acknowledged that quality parity between the two sides remains a challenge. It's not only about quantity, but also quality. To be honest, quality is comparable to that of the enemy, because the enemy is also improving its capabilities. But we have also made a very significant leap forward, he said. The overall shift is dramatic when placed against the trajectory of just 12 months ago. Palisa noted that in the first half of 2025, Ukraine was far from parity with Russia in the use of strike drones, primarily FPV systems, and that gap directly affected the pace of Russian advances. He also pointed to Russia's counteroffensive operations in the Kursk direction as a specific case where Russian forces held a significant advantage in fiber-optic drones, an edge that contributed to the results Russia achieved in that campaign. The turnaround since then reflects both Ukraine's industrial scaling and a more systematic approach to procurement and frontline distribution. Russian forces, Palisa said, are concentrating efforts on certain fronts specifically to establish an advantage in what he called the low sky, the low-altitude space, where drones operate in order to support tactical successes for their ground units. That localized pressure, particularly in the southern sectors, underscores why the overall 1.3 to 1 ratio does not translate uniformly into Ukrainian advantage at every point along the 1,000-kilometer contact line. On the ground robotics side, the numbers released by Ukraine's Ministry of Defense on April 7 are no less striking. Ukraine's defense forces completed more than 9,000 combat and logistical missions using ground robotic systems in March 2026, according to data from the Delta Battlefield Management Platform, compared to more than 2,900 such missions in November 2025 and over 7,500 in January 2026. Across the first 3 months of 2026, ground robotic systems carried out approximately 24,500 missions in total, covering ammunition delivery, logistical support, and casualty evacuation. The Ministry of Defense has stated that one of its priorities is to maximize the transition of frontline logistics to robotic systems in order to reduce risks for personnel, with ground platforms increasingly replacing soldiers in the most dangerous areas of the front. Taken together, the aerial and ground drone figures released this week paint a picture of a Ukrainian military that has not simply held its position in the unmanned systems competition but has materially shifted the balance, at least at the aggregate level, in its favor. Whether that aggregate advantage can be sustained and converted into localized dominance on the sectors where Russian pressure remains heaviest is the question Ukrainian commanders will be working to answer in the weeks ahead.